Okay, and thanks again for allowing to record this this webinar. And now I'll pass the floor to Talis Disenkops to tell a bit more about the project. Today we're having this webinar. Talis,
thank you, Anda. Shall I show my 2 slides, or you will do this? Okay. Thank you. And thank to all the participants for joining our second seminar, which is organized within the framework of CIRCLE project. It stands for Promoting Collaboration for Sustainable and Circular Use of Bioresources Across Agriculture, Forestry, and Aquaculture. The project is essentially social science, although we have environmental scientists on board. And it's mainly about collaborations between different stakeholders who take part in advancing the circular bioeconomy. The project is research one. It is funded by Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway research grant. And our primary objective is to strengthen interdisciplinary knowledge about innovative circular business models and collaborative arrangements. We are a range of disciplines, sociologists, economists, environmental scientists, philosophers, political scientists, looking from different angles on the same processes of collaboration within the bioeconomy, specifically in sectors of agriculture, forestry, and aquaculture. Our focus is on bioresources, not all of them on byproducts, mostly on byproducts and waste. What happens to them? Are they further used in a next production and usage loops, etc.? And we are keen to understand what kind of business models drive this circularity of resources, and also what kind of collaborations, be it collaboration between businesses and research organizations, or businesses, research and civic organizations, etc. So we are really keen to understand those collaborative mechanisms. And now the next and my final introductory slide is about our work we have done. Does it move forward to the next one?
I sort of did, but you can't see it?
No, we cannot, otherwise I can tell.
Maybe please.
Yeah, it's better not to stuck in technical problems. Yes, we have done quite a lot of research activities and efforts. We started with conceptualizing circularity, looking into literature. Then we mapped specific individual examples and initiatives. How do bioresources flow, and taking a bioresource as a core. And we collected 150 such examples from 4 countries, originally 4 countries, the Baltic countries and Norway, but lately we also invited some Ukrainian researchers to contribute. Then we dig deep into 12 case studies of circular businesses, looking in particular businesses, collaborating with them, trying to understand their business models, their value propositions, their arrangements, how do they mainstream and try to produce new products of different kind. And even what we discovered, indeed, these resources are flowing across the 3 originally mentioned sectors like aquaculture, agriculture, forestry, but reaching out into food production, into a chemical industry, into new forms of biomaterials produced. And yes, and we did also many other. And by the way, this webinar series also a kind of activity event to share, to discuss our findings. And now we are heading towards the end, the last half year of the project, and preparing scientific publications, and also trying to design policy and practice recommendations for people who govern, be there ministries or professional associations who take part in circular business policy. making. And with that, I probably finish my short introduction. Today's seminar is on business models, and from a business model perspective, and also from the cost benefit, what does it cost, and for the companies to start off with more circularity in their operation. And with that, I thank you again for joining the webinar and pass back to Anda.
Thank you, Talis. Okay, I think we can start now, dig into the content of our today's theme. And I pass the floor to Mikelis Grivins. As I said, he's a senior researcher at the Baltic Studies Centre, and he was leading the case study work. So I guess there will be quite a few insights that were gathered through this research. So Mikelis, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anda. And thank you for inviting me to give this presentation on what we have done in during the Circle project. So you probably already know that the title of my presentation is Circular Business Models and Collaborative Arrangements. So I will try to talk about mainly about business models, but also about the context that makes these business models possible. And as Tals and Anda has already indicated, this what I'm going to present, these are the results of the Circle project, and more particularly of the 12 case studies that has been conducted during the project. So I have to note before I start that there is a long list of authors that has been engaged in various capacities in making this report reality. So some of us have conducted case studies, some of us have written the comparative report. But unfortunately, as it is with presentations, there's only one person who is giving these presentations. So this time, this honor falls on my shoulders, which means that if there were really disturbing things that I'm saying, probably it's just me and the fact that I'm not a native speaker or I have misunderstood something terribly. But if there are some really smart and intelligent things, that's just remember that it's a collaborative effort and there are a number of authors behind these findings.
If I may, before you proceed, I just wanted to note that if there are emerging any questions, immediate questions, please feel free to write in the chat, but we'll also have a discussion slot in the end. So keep your questions to that as well. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, so the structure of the presentation is that I will start with a brief description of the methodological considerations that we had. Then I will continue with describing what we have found in regards with what is the context for circular business initiatives. And then I will talk about the business models themselves. So with that being said, so the methodological consideration. So as Tals already indicated, Circle is looking at various social and organizational aspects behind the circular use of bioresource residues, wastes, and byproducts. And this particular work package, VP3, is scrutinizing one particular aspect of these social arrangements, namely it is scrutinizing how business models are created and connected to particular bioresource loops. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to connect entrepreneurial activities with different ways how these enterprises are trying to benefit from bioresource residues. There are very many ways how one can study social process. In this case, however, there is this limitation that the object that we are studying, namely business models and circular practices, is very broad. And that since beginning have limited our options, which methodological choice we can make. And typically when sociological research is engaging with very complex issues that has blurred boundaries, we are using case studies. And this is what we did on this occasion as well. We conducted 12 case studies. I will elaborate on that in after a couple of slides. But now, just very quickly, the benefits from conducting case studies is that we can sort of present the complexity of phenomena that we are researching as such in their full beauty, so that we can explore all the different aspects that there are. The minus of this, or the downside of this method, is that we cannot talk about any any sort of generalization. So these are 12 case studies, and what we have found, but we cannot really generalize our findings. So usually, so we have conducted or used this method quite a lot, and usually we have engaged in this method defining cases something really broad, like an industry or a region or city region or something like a broad phenomenon. In this case, we felt that this might not work because we want to avoid vagueness. We wanted to be very specific, very precise, and that meant that we have to go on an enterprise level. And because of that, we defined that in this case, a case study is an enterprise, but also a circular practice that is occurring in this particular enterprise. And when I'm saying circular practice, what I mean is sort of a loop closing activity related to bioresource residues. So I think that the keywords here are closed loops and bioresource residues or waste or byproducts. As you probably, since you are here, you probably know already quite a lot about enterprises that are trying to close bioresource loops. So also probably you have noticed that this spectrum of these enterprises is just really broad. There are huge diversity of enterprises that can be engaged in these activities. And our goal since day one was to try to sort of capture, at least to some extent, these diverse practices that are there. And because of that, we created this, very early on, we created this checklist of different aspects that we thought that might be important when we are selecting cases. So we were looking at the scope of the case, which in our interpretation meant sort of the number of actors, or to rephrase, a complexity of the case. So there can be very simple cases where something is happening just on the scale of enterprise, but then there can be very complex case where you have to redefine the whole supply chain for the particular practice to work. We were looking where these developed products have been sold. We were looking at what kind of bioresources are involved, and we were looking how they are actually processed or what's done with these bioresource residues. And on top of that, we were thinking that since Circle, one of the focuses was sort of to assess the cross-sectoral potential or how these practices are stemming across sectors. We also added on top of that the dimension that these cases have to be cross-sectoral and they have to have links with consumers. Some of these criteria worked better, some of them might not have worked as good as we anticipated. Still, I think that helped us to ensure that at the end we have a diverse spectrum of cases. And we ended up with 12 cases, as I mentioned before. That was what we planned, and that's what we have conducted during the last 2 years. So in total, we have conducted these cases in 4 countries, in Norway, Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. And in each country, we conducted 3 case studies. The diversity covered, so there were the typical solutions where bioresource residues were from bioresource residues, some sort of energy was produced, but then there were also these cases, a couple of them where food waste was used as insect feed. There were a couple of cases where sort of completely new products were produced, and then there were sort of also, on one hand, we had very low-tech solutions, but then on the other hand, we also have had some very high-tech cases where you really saw investments in innovations. For the analysis, we initially went with this idea that we will conduct, we'll use business models of Canvas to describe what's happening on the ground in these business models. But then the business models Canvas is not so well equipped to actually capture issues related to sustainability and environmental performance. So we actually went and did a quick scan of different methods that have been building on business models Canvas approach. And we came up with that some of the modifications that has been made recently might have been better suited for what we had in mind. Namely, we went with this 3-step approach where business model canvas is just one step of analysis of business initiative, but then on top of that, there is contextual analysis of what's happening on the ground, or analysis of the environment surrounding the enterprise. And also there is some assessment of sustainability impact or how this enterprise is affecting or trying to resolve these sustainability issues. So we couldn't implement this particular method as it has been described by the authors, but we tried to adapt so it would work better for what we had in mind. And namely, we came up with 3 steps of analysis. So we tried to assess context. For the context, we used the STEEP approach, which is basically a very complex way how to say that we just look to 5 dimensions of reality, and you choose these 5 dimensions just to make sure that you don't miss any relevant aspect of what might happen. And these 5 dimensions are, as written in the slide, social, technological, environmental, economic, and political. We looked at the business model on its own. Business model canvas have a number of categories that one has to assess. We saw that for our case, it might be too complex. Therefore, we used a much more simplified version where you address only value proposition, value creation, on value capture practices. And I think in our case, that worked fairly well. And then we tried to also draw how these bioresource loops are connected to enterprise, illustrating how bioresource residues are coming into enterprise and what's actually done to them and how the loop is closed. So I have to say that in our heads at the beginning, this looked very logical and seemed that it will work just fine. In practice, of course, we faced some challenges, but we managed, I think, to resolve all of them and got rather interesting results at the end. So some challenges that we face, and I think sort of 2 of them are fairly obvious, that there is just, well, all of them actually are fairly obvious. So there was a huge complexity that we realized that it's hard to bring together under one comparative report. And so in the future research, there might be a need to just assess particular subsectors. We were struggling to convince some of the enterprise, and while initial spectrum of our cases, we didn't have any problems at all of inviting them, and they sort of felt very engaged in the project. And but for some cases, we actually felt that it's very challenging to maintain the interest, and on some occasions we lost our respondents in the mid-project where they announced that they might not be willing to continue collaborate with us. So for the next time, we feel that maybe if we want to focus on enterprise level when we are conducting case studies, maybe we should sort of start planning which case these are since the beginning of proposal writing. But despite this challenge, we still managed to secure all the cases, and we managed to secure really interesting and broad diversity of cases. And also what we noticed that some of these enterprises, they are introducing very interesting solutions, but when you look deeper, they are not yet on the sort of, they could be rather described as startups, and they might need still to sort of make this jump to an entrepreneurial level where they are actually making profits. Actually that has been described in the comparative report, and if you have more questions about what we have done, you can access that on Baltic Studies Centre homepage. So the context, as I promised, this is the first chapter where we describe what we have found, and I'm sorry, I will take a zip of my copy. So the context. We basically assessed 3 particular aspects. We assessed context in general. We assessed what are the barriers enterprises feel that are hampering their success, and what are the sort of positive factors that encourage their engagement with circular practices. And just to reiterate, these contextual factors come from 12 enterprises with whom we have conducted an in-depth work, and we have asked, and on top of that, just independently assessed what might be the factors that are in general helping or hampering them to work with circular resource use. So to rephrase it, this is not a representative assessment of experts. This is coming from 12 case studies. So when enterprises were asked what social aspects might be behind or might affect their willingness to engage with or might affect their engagement with bioresource residues, they said that there's a growing social awareness that there is a need to go green or to sort of support green solutions. There's also a supporting, there's growing knowledge support, and so more information is available on how to do it. And also in Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, there were some claims that actually these small countries serve well as a test market. So if some international actor wants to do something new, they can come here and actually test something. Technologically, actors said that there has been some impressive technological development, and also we have observed mainstream of technologies, which means that those that want to do something, they actually can, because technologies are available, blueprints are available, how to implement them. So you don't have to sort of create solutions from scratch, which also means, of course, that maybe not so innovative solutions get adopted more frequently, but still, that just means that these solutions are becoming more frequent. We didn't hear so much environmental considerations from these entrepreneurs, but these environmental considerations came through policy suggestions. So while entrepreneurs weren't so concerned with environment, they were realizing that this is a major debate taking place in policy making, and that it will affect them ever more through these new regulations. Economically, especially in Norway, we observed that there are growing willingness to invest in green solutions. Basically, that just meant that some actors, well, it doesn't mean that money is lying in the ground, but that money was available. And also there were some market disruptions and then some spikes in prices related to broader economic processes that sort of force these enterprises to reconsider what solutions they are using. And of course, in terms of policy, there is sort of growing interest and growing support to these practices that also encourage the enterprise to consider circular use of resources. So major enabling factors that enterprises said that sort of these are the factors that helped us to make this decision. There is some sort of excitement about new technologies and being in the forefront of change. Also, there is sort of openness and transparency among larger enterprises that sort of presumes that you have to be more responsible because you are more transparent. And also, it's often not residues and bioresource waste isn't anymore a problem for one enterprise. It's a broader problem where a number of factors potentially are affected by that in very many ways. So there suddenly are communities of enterprise or actors that are interested to do something about that, which just makes it so much easier for change to take place. As I said, technologies are access to technologies and consultations, and solutions are already well established. Some technologies are getting cheaper. So basically it's not such a hard decision anymore. And environment, although we have listed some of the aspects, as I said before, enterprises on their own are not so keen to stress these environmental aspects. Not saying that they are not important, it's just that they are not so keen to debate these. I think I will explain why after a couple of slides. Economically, of course, these enterprises are looking for potential profit. As I said, suddenly they are not alone in these attempts to do something differently. There is a broader support often in supply chain because there are more actors that are looking for new solutions. And there is access actually to funding that can help to make this transition. And of course, this part of this access comes through financial instruments coming from policymakers, through subsidies or other means how these enterprises can be subsidized. On the other hand, there are barriers. Sort of some of them are really sort of just represented by one or two cases. For example, disputes with neighbors that actually comes from one particular case, but then there are some that are much more widespread. For example, while in general there is support for green solutions, acceptance for waste-related products still might be relatively low, especially among broader consumers groups. There is lack of infrastructure for a number of solutions, which sort of limits possibility to upscale or to introduce particular solutions. And consumers are still very price sensitive, which means that mostly it's still competition about the lowest price, which means that these enterprises sort of struggle. And actually, as again, I will show this later on, they struggle to sort of show the different side or other side of what we are doing, the circular side, but they are mainly being judged by the price that they are providing. Technologically, while there are these technologies available, most of our enterprises said that they have struggled to actually come up with localized solutions that wouldn't require any adoptions or sort of transformations that would allow them to introduce them in their enterprise, which meant, and also many of these enterprises felt not that they shared with some information, but they felt that at some point they might be willing to sell also their experience, which meant that not everybody was sharing their experience, and thus while these broad solutions were available, more localized and more nuanced interpretations of what needs to be done actually were still kept under wraps. Economically, while enterprises were thinking about these possibilities to make investments, there is this instability that affects everybody, and sometimes these larger investments just they felt that they don't want to do them, and also since the main consideration were very pragmatic on why to do it, sometimes these investments felt still too high, so enterprises were not really willing to make these investments. And then something that went through all of the case studies, well, not all, I'm exaggerating, but most of the case studies, and was repeated again and again, that quite often resource chains or ways how to get your hands on bioresource residues are still underdeveloped. And if you can create an enterprise that process these materials, but you might not have a stable flow of waste. So as said, under environmental dimension. So it's not very stable business model, because you cannot predict the quantities that you will be able to process, and thus you cannot operate in the most efficient way. And in terms of policy, some enterprises said that there are you can get a fund if you are established enterprise, but there might be a lack of funding for circular startups, which sort of limits possibility to come up with completely innovative ideas. And also sort of enterprises struggle to sort of legitimize or label what they actually do to actually fully profit from their unique products. With that being said, I have run through the contextual aspects, and I see that Elina Lats is trying to join, so I will just admit her. This leads us to circular business initiatives, sort of the entrepreneurial side of how this enterprise tackled the issues related to bioresource loop closure. If somebody is talking, I hear something, but I'm not sure, is it addressed to me or is it something else? Okay. So I think when we are talking about circular business initiatives or circular business models, the healthy starting point is to consider what is the reasoning behind these initiatives. And partly we maybe were expecting when we went in these case studies that there will be more enterprises stressing that they are really doing it for environmental reasons, that they are sort of maybe more environmentally conscious about the future challenges, and they are sort of trying to do the responsible thing. And the argumentation still might be there, but when they were talking to us, they were mainly putting forefront the pragmatic reasons. And of course, that's logical. They are enterprises. They are trying to make profits, and they are looking how they can do that. But that just meant that they are looking at these issues very pragmatically, and they are assessing how potentially they could make profits of these solutions, and is it actually the best way for them to proceed? So usually when we ask these enterprises why they actually adopt these practices, what they were saying is that they see a shift in potential value of waste, not maybe immediately. Some of them saw it immediately, but maybe in the future. So they were trying to correspond or to introduce a solution for a potential business opportunity either today or in the future. They saw that maybe in the future they might have substantial costs in trying to get rid of waste or byproducts or residues that they have. And they thought, well, maybe we can perceive these future investments as future costs as investment that we make today to eliminate these costs. And so that was a long-term planning that pushed them to make this investment. Also, a substantial factor, as I mentioned, that there has been fluctuations and factor like Russia's aggression in Ukraine, which spiked the price for fertilizers and for different energy sources. So that also pushed the enterprises to reconsider what they are doing, and that was constantly given as an example that while we want to be a little bit more independent and less affected by these global turmoils, and that's sort of an argument why we decided that we have to do something different. Some of these enterprises were just searching for new products that sort of would offer something completely new in the market. The example of insect feed or insect protein that I mentioned before is one illustration how this can be done. And then some of them were just looking at completely new models of what to do with waste and how to deal with that. But as I said, in general, these are very pragmatic reasons. So when as I said, the enterprises that we engaged were very diverse, and we struggled a bit with the diversity, what to do with it. But I think in general, we can conclude that there are sort of two dimensions that we can put on top of the cases that we have. On the one hand, there is the degree of innovations these enterprises represent, and some of them are producing some truly remarkable new innovations and trying to push the boundaries of what enterprises are doing. And then the other dimension is the level of integration into existing business models. Is it a standalone activity, or is it something that is already well integrated in an existing enterprise? And to large extent, I think with some outliers, we can talk that most of the enterprises fitted into two categories. Either there's the circularity was growing out of the practice that they have been conducting for some while, and that was just a natural evolution for them. And these are the enterprises that are where the circularity is very integrated in their general business model. And this meant quite often that they are not very innovative. They were not very concerned that they wanted to do eliminate their residues efficiently, but they didn't look for the highest profit margins. That was just an activity that they did, and also quite often they were much more secure in their practices because they had a steady residue flow, and also they were not so dependent on the profits that they make from these particular circular practices. On the other hand, we have these very innovative enterprises that push the boundaries of what's possible, but also they are much more dependent on the profits that are coming out of their activities. They might be willing to upscale quite often because that was the plan, how they could make the profits. But unfortunately, they struggled with, they were looking how to actually make sure that there is these ongoing flows of input materials, how to secure the resources needed to actually continue their activities. And so they were much more risk exposed, and while they sort of presented what could be done with these resources, they actually struggled to illustrate a functional or successful business model. That doesn't mean that it's not there. It's just that they resembled quite often startups rather than already well-established enterprise. And we had to question it sometimes, and since some of the authors are here, I can maybe they disagree, but we had to question on some occasions, can these solutions actually be translated into successful business models? So maybe they can function as startups, but if they are upscaled, it might turn out that they would not be able to function. But that, of course, depends from case to case. So value creation, which usually means looking at how money is spent and how it's coming into an enterprise. So for us, it was not so much. So we will address the flow of cash, or not so much flow of cash, but cost benefit analysis in the next presentation, where we will, our colleagues from RA will discuss this extended cost benefit analysis and the results that they have obtained looking at the same 12 cases. But here we can discuss very shortly on how these enterprises regarded what actually is the added value of what they are doing. And as I said beforehand, while some of them were really looking at creating new products are the main thing that they are doing, many of them are not so much focusing on creating these new products, but rather resolving some operational issues that are currently observed in an enterprise. For example, some of them were just reducing costs, as I said, emerging from the energy price spikes. Some of them were just optimizing internal process, and some of them were saying that there might be potential future costs due to fines coming from policymakers or additional tax or whatever. And they just thought, well, maybe this is a solution. So it wasn't always typically that they were looking to sell something new. Instead, they were looking quite often at doing things just differently due to practical reasons related to organizational structure of the enterprise. Value capture. So from our perspective, this means how they actually manage to benefit from this circular use of bioresource residues. And well, again, I have to start with the remark that these enterprises were extremely diverse, and it's really difficult to sort of say something that unifies them all that would still make a lot of sense, because these things that unify them all are really on a broad scale. But there were a couple of things or a couple of themes that were reoccurring, that so it seems that most of them are doing to remain or to capture the value of these closed loops. And these are the six themes that we have identified. As I said, they are very from a high perspective, from a bird's view, because these cases are so different. But I think that a couple of takeaways there. So to make this thing work, it required a lot of coordination, because on a number of cases, so you have to change quite a lot in your enterprise and the surrounding supply chain. Okay, that's a little bit distracting, but also very entertaining. So we know that sort of whenever we are talking about change in agriculture or in food industry, what we are usually saying is that there needs to be cooperation, and nobody, well, some of us elaborate what it means, some of us don't elaborate what it means. In this case, I think we can fully commit to the statement that collaboration or cooperation is the key for these things to take place, because quite often these require shift in the supply chain and the systems surrounding the enterprise. And we saw it in Norway in a couple of examples where different actors really have come together to make sure that these circular solutions work. And then in Latvia and Lithuania and Estonia, we saw that also either usually smaller groups of actors coming together, if they are coming together, or there are these enterprises that really have rich diversity within them, and then they can sort of rearrange these resources, all diverse type of resources that they have in the enterprise in a different way to make this thing actually tick. And often that we saw when they cannot do it, they decide to actually operate only with internal. So you need to create these organizational solutions in order to upscale or to create some broader solutions of circular bioresource use, because again there needs to be outlet channels for your product, and there needs to be resources that are coming in. And if you are relying only on your own resources, that's a stable flow of resources, but unfortunately that's also a limited source. So you cannot upscale. And sort of if you want to do something really seriously, you need to start to think how you coordinate. But it's also linked to organizational structure, which means that if you start to coordinate number of actors, you need to have contracts, you need to have different joint solutions that sort of allow all the engaged actors to benefit, or make sure that there are this stable resource flow, and that there are these interlinkages that link these actors together. As you see, steady resource flow is also a separate factor to be considered. On a couple of enterprises, also we saw that so they make these things tick by focusing on multifunctionality, sort of just making the enterprise as diverse as possible and linking different aspects together, which made sure that sort of you don't really look for profit for any single one of the activities, but altogether they sort of just create a very efficient microorganism how this enterprise work. And of course, availability of knowledge, it's something that we saw that so some of the enterprises had already well-developed experts or well-educated experts that could help them, but in other enterprises we saw that basically those activists that decided to create these enterprises benefiting from bioresource residues, they were coming from industries where they had prolonged exposure to different aspects of waste or bioresource residues or other similar resources, to sort of allow them to be very knowledgeable on what can be done and how it can be done. With that being said, I'm coming very quickly to the end of my presentation, but my last couple of slides are related to value proposition. And I like the diamond, so I tried to illustrate this slide, and I think this is the nicest slide of my presentation. At least I feel quite proud of this visualization. But that's an off topic. The main thing that I wanted to say is what we realized that so there are very few of these enterprises really made a clear statement that they are selling something that is extraordinary. And even then, when they did that, that was not so much about circularity, but about broader sustainability statements that they made. In other cases, either they were not so concerned of how they frame what they are doing because they sort of benefited internally, or if they were selling something to some products to other business partners, they were really looking for the lowest price, because it didn't seem that having this particular product produced in particular way mattered so much in the industry. So we couldn't say that we found much evidence that this is used as to frame that this products produced in circular practice is something that is very particular in the market at the moment. With that being said, a couple of conclusions. I put together only 4, but we have more in our report, and I hope that some of them will crystallize later on also when we will have a discussion. But I think these are the main findings. So very few truly innovative solutions we have identified. Probably there are more, but we see that some of them are trying to do something really innovative, but they yet have to sort of prove their commercial viability. There is sort of trade-offs between the efficiency of loop closing and sensitivity towards local needs, which means that sort of you need often scale to become really effective, but that means that you lose your local rootedness and you lose the connection to local needs and environments that surround you. Economic motivation, so that's what prevailed in the among the cases that we explored. And finally, networking is really a key, and we saw that most successful enterprises actually had strong networks behind them that supported their effort to do something differently. So thank you. And again, it was not the work of just, I'm not the sole author, there's a whole bunch. And if you want to check out our full report, please visit this research at .lv or Circle E, the others that's mentioned there.
Thanks a lot, Mikelis. That was a really comprehensive overview of what has been done. I think we have at least a few minutes for some immediate questions, if there are from the audience. So feel free to either raise hand or speak up straight away, because there hadn't been any issues raised in the chat so far. If there aren't any, you can still think of those that might lead to a further discussion after the second presentation. So please keep notes of your ideas for this final discussion. And then I'll pass the floor now to Auzins, and now I'll tell the right name, from the Institute of Agricultural Resources and Economics. Sorry, we have been used to AREI all the time and not knowing the spelling of the full title. So the floor is yours, and please share the screen.
Will you give to me the possibility to share?
Sure. Yes, and sorry, I didn't introduce also Ieva Leimane. She's also a colleague of Albert's. I guess you'll be then sharing the talk, so please. Can you make it in the presentation mode? Great, now it works. Thank you.
It worked, yeah. Thank you.
Yes,
yeah.
thank you.
So hello everyone, and thank you for introduction. And I will be here with my colleague Alberts, and we will sharing our presentation. I will pass it, and Albert will join for a moment, for a very, very important moment. Yes, but today we would like to talk about our part of this participation in the project called Circle, and we were conducting this socioeconomic cost and benefit analysis for case studies, as Mikelis already told, and we would like to present today this cost and benefit analysis, socioeconomic cost and benefit analysis, as an approach to assess the social desirability of those circular business models which we were studying. And we see that this approach, this social economic cost and benefit analysis, will become more and more topical regarding to those environmental issues and problems we are facing and globally, and also legislation initiatives and everything is happening in our environment where we are living and where we are working. So we see this approach as very interesting, and we participated in this project, conducting it for case studies, and today we would like to share a little bit. So I managed to pause the slides. Yeah. Today, 3 topics from our sides. So a little bit of theory, and then challenges we faced during our work, and takeaways we would like to share. So I'm giving the floor to my colleague, Auzins, for some theory.
Hi, hello, I'm Auzins. I hope you can hear me. Cost benefit analysis is
very bad. Sorry.
Sorry, we will a little bit solve the problem of echoes.
Yeah.
So I hope we solve the problem. Cost-benefit analysis is a systematic approach that allows estimating the strengths and weaknesses of or more alternatives. This approach analyzes the expected balance of benefits and costs, including both tangible and intangible one. According to the basic principles of cost-benefit analysis, benefits and costs are usually expressed in monetary terms. However, it can be conducted as a qualitative analysis as well. And we have used this qualitative manner in the Circle project as well. Next slide, please. As you can see, there are 2 ways how to conduct a cost-benefit analysis. Probably many of you have heard about the financial analysis, which focuses on the probability of the projects, business models, and etc. By considering cash inflows and outflows. This is quite classical theory from many textbooks. The purpose of this financial analysis is to assess the project from the financial perspective of the project, perspective of the project owner, or sometimes key stakeholder. The classical result of such financial analysis is discounted net cash flow, which is usually expressed as net present value. The other way is a socioeconomic analysis, also called simply economic analysis, which is less known. The purpose of socioeconomic analysis is to appraise the project's or business models' contribution to the welfare of society. This analysis deals with socioeconomic benefits and costs. Thus, socioeconomic analysis provides a wider perspective. Therefore, it was considered as the most appropriate for the assessment of innovative circular models and was used in the framework of Circle project. Next slide, please. Recently, the European Union have adopted many legislative acts related to the sustainability disclosure regulatory framework. Perhaps you have heard about European sustainability reporting standards. This framework regulates the disclosure of information. With this framework, companies will also have to disclose whether and how they plan to address the transition away from using primary resources and increasing the use of secondary resources. So it will be advantage if companies will have such plans regarding circularity. Next slide, please. Providing that the results of socioeconomic analysis is positive or socioeconomic benefits exceed socioeconomic costs, socioeconomic cost-benefit analysis helps to demonstrate to society, funders, state, and etc. that the company's choices are societally desirable. This aspect is particularly significant if public support, for example, subsidies are involved, or a company seeks for positive society's attitude towards its business projects. So I will give back floor to my colleague Ieva.
So, as you see, it was quite a little bit of theory, but for knowing and for future, maybe that's enough. And if you are interested in more, then our research results will be published in this project web page, so there can be arranged more information about the theory also. But continuing with what Albert said, that if we have this positive result from cost-benefit analysis, which is conducted in socio-economic approach in this way, then you can tell the society and the state or funders this good message that your choices, if you are a company, and that your choices, your investments are not just good for business, but they are increasing welfare of society also, good for environment, or gives benefits for society. And that was the reason why we conducted this analysis for case studies in this project. And what we did 12 case studies, made those cost-benefit analysis in quantitative and in qualitative way. For 8 cases, that was this qualitative way, and for 4 cases we made this quantitative cost-benefit analysis. And we used, for this theoretical basis, we used European Commission guidelines for cost-benefit analysis for investment projects, and this is widely used for all the projects which are implemented in cohesion policy framework. And as you know, those projects are usually large ones, expensive ones, related to development of infrastructure. And of course, there are a lot of factors and impacts of such kind of projects. And that's why there is a necessity to make this cost-benefit analysis to find out whether this large investments are good for society, not just for business. And in such a way, this approach gives this perspective, wider perspective, and we can look not just on benefits what enterprises gain from investments, but we can look also how they help to improve our lives. And this practice we made in project is unique, for at least for Latvia and for Latvian cases. At least we don't know any other cases or experience so far that any company would make this assessment for their business models or projects or or circularity practices. And to talk about a little bit more about challenges we faced, I would like to focus on two challenges. This is one I would call incremental approach, which is necessary to conduct this cost-benefit analysis, and another one is related to access to information. But to understand a little bit more why those two challenges were the important ones or significant ones, I would like to tell a little bit about the process we made. So there are a few steps to conduct this cost-benefit analysis for circular business model. As Albert mentioned, it is always necessary that there are two scenarios because we are talking about comparison. Incremental approach means that we are clarifying costs and benefits, both tangible and untangible, in two scenarios. One of scenario is which is scenario of changes, or this in our case this is scenario of implemented circular business model. And in other case, the scenario should be something we are comparing the changes with. And in our case, this was counterfactual. We made it up for each case, this baseline scenario. And in our case, it was very important to think about those business practices. How would they look like if the circularity wouldn't be there? And the circularity, we are thinking about the circularity of bioresources, so not materials, not packaging, but bioresources. And in our case, that was a quite large challenge to think about those theoretical linear practices that would be implemented if the company wouldn't do this circular business model, which we were studying. And this example, which you see in the slide, is very interesting and a very nice example. It is about production protein and fats from insects. As Mikelis also more than one time mentioned this particular case study, and in our 12 cases, there were two the same kind of cases, but this is one. And in this green square, you can see a gray one, and this is our case study. So black soldier fly liveries production and processing, this was our case study. And why this case is so nice, and this example is so nice, because we can see if we're talking about circular business model, flow of bioresources in this circular business model, then we see the particular place of our company takes into this circularity, and actually we see that it fulfills this circle. It like ends up the circle, because in this case of baseline scenario, there is no circle. We are ending up with landfilling of organic leftovers. And also this example is nice because it shows the main the main threats why circularity is important and why the circularity practice is important and topical to involve in our business practices, because for example, in this baseline scenario, you see the red arrow where the organic leftovers are becoming a waste and landfilled, and instead, in case of circularity, they are used for production of new products, for valorization of proteins and fats into new values, and transporting them back into circularity, into this our industry level. And as you see, also in this baseline scenario, there can be circular practices. For example, very traditional circular practices found in agriculture sector, that animal husbandry is related to crop production, and one gives feed to another, and another gives back manure for fertilizing the fields, and the circularity is there. But this is the basic level, and very common and known, but the basic. And there are a lot of other ways how to use those bioresources, how to valorize them, and how to make nutrients come back in the circle. And this introduction and production of larvae from those insects is one of the ways. Yes, focusing on challenges, I just wanted to add that it is very important in every case, in every case where we are conducting this social economic cost-benefit analysis, to create the baseline scenario as much appropriate to this circular business model as it is possible. In our case, we chose the way that we were thinking about business as usual practice. We were thinking what would happen if there won't be this circularity. And because the results of this analysis is very much impacted on this baseline scenario. For example, if we would say that leftovers, organic leftovers, are not landfilled in this baseline scenario, but for example, used as composting and then coming back to crop production, then there is already reduced this threat to nature, and we don't have anymore this red arrow, and we have a traditional way of circularity when those organic waste or organic leftovers are coming back to the field as fertilizers. But we assumed that the business as usual in this kind of business model, talking about this insects production, would be that those organic leftovers would become as organic waste. The next challenge we faced was access to information. And this has a lot of reasons why, because half of our case studies were novel business initiatives just in the starting stage, without practical experience of working in normal scale or in this industrial scale. So we should make assumptions and estimations to calculate what would be the benefits and costs if this business would run as normal business in normal amounts and scales. Also, we faced a problem of commercial secret. On our opinion, but we are researchers, we didn't ask anything that was commercially secret, but it's of course can be the decision of company to say that some issues are their commercial secret and they don't share this information. So again, we should think what to do with this. To still make those our calculations and cost-benefit analysis of those cases. And hugely extensive knowledge is required to conduct this kind of analysis, because one person or one group of person should have a competence regarding economics, regarding social issues, regarding chemistry, regarding nutrients, regarding agronomy. So we are lucky we are working in this Agricultural Resource and Economics Institute, and we had our colleagues and partners in this project, so we could gain and have all those competencies and knowledges to force and to make this challenge less powerful. So, and when we succeeded and made our analysis, led them to the end or to the conclusions, then we came with some takeaways from case studies from this analysis. We would like to have for ourselves, and today we'd like to share with you also. And they are quite general, not specifically linked with any case, but still we found out that mainly or mostly the social economic benefits are related to the possibility to valorize the bioproducts or residues, and to transform the nutrients which are still in those residues to higher value, and the possibility to reintroduce them back to the circulation, make them being again the raw material from other production possibilities. So this is talking about those nutrients, particularly proteins and fats, which are still in organic leftovers, and which can be used as materials for production of new proteins and fats, and reintroduction in this circulation again, in form of animal feed or in form of fertilizer for soil improvements. And there, in that way, these proteins and fats coming from leftovers can reduce the necessity for new proteins and fats. So we can reduce the necessity for new raw materials in such a kind of way. Another benefit is possibility to replace fossil sources for production of energy. Mainly this is electricity or heat, and in such a way, again, we can reduce our dependency on fossil sources for production of the electricity and heat, which is commonly and widely used energy resources. And the most important benefit from circularity practices is possibility to reduce the waste. And this is the main purpose why circular practices are promoted, and this is the best way we can gain. Additionally, in some cases, we found out that there can be benefits also for biodiversity. For example, by reducing the leaching of nutrients to environments, or reducing of or substituting the ingredients in feed production, which is with high this biodiversity pressure. For example, we can substitute the fish meal in feed production with this insect meal, and this is also the benefit for biodiversity, not just for this valorization of proteins. On other hand, the costs for those circularity practices in main cases are related to investments in research and development, investments already in technology, and already in modernization of processes. And usually it's a lot of money which should be invested. Additionally, the costs are related to additional energy need and labor need for those processes in which we transform and transform those nutrients and facilitate their return to this circulation. So if we are talking about processing, necessity of processing those leftovers or something like that, then there is energy and labor usually linked and involved. And the third category of costs usually found in our case studies, they are collection and transportation of residues, of byproducts, and already also transportation for those new products. We invited in our cases, in our case studies, a term called bridge sectors, and we understand with that our main sectors of study and our interest were alpha sectors: agriculture, forestry, and aquaculture, and bridge sectors were those which helped to valorize those bioproducts and to help which helps them to higher value added. And this was the most common way for those bridge sectors was the production of electricity, which came in our this circularities in those circular business models. And we found out that involvement of those bridge sectors in the flow of bioresources enable to expand the amounts and production levels and scales, and it helps to increase those social economic benefits from the circularity practices. But however, the production of energy from the byproducts is not necessarily the best way and the optimal way of value of possibilities to add value to those byproducts and residues. And also in cases we were studying where these byproducts were used for production of electricity, we found out that there is a place for better use of heat also coming out of this process. Also,
Ieva,
we found
1 minute, please. 1 minute,
okay.
if we still want to have some discussion. Thank you.
There are also just 2 sentences more. Yeah. So yes, we found out that there are situations and cases when, because circular business model creates significant social economic benefits, but due to different barriers, they can't be seen at the moment. And this is the situation when this initiative can be not realized because there is now this financial interest from the owner from this company side. And in such cases, we found out that if those social benefits are really high, then it may be it can be placed for public support, and can be placed for another ways of motivation, how to make those initiatives happen. And last sentence from my side, yes, that we found out that in most cases the social economic benefits exceeds the costs, and the main challenge when it's not working, it is related to amount of investments, and it's related to energy which is needed in operation of those processes. And that's why if the circularity can be involved without large investments, then it's quite mostly likely be the cost benefit analysis will be positive, and those social economic benefits will exceed the costs. But in case of large investments, there can be different results. Thank you for your patience and for attention and for your time.
Thank you, Ieva and Albert. Thanks a lot for sharing your research results with us and with the audience. As promised, I mean, we are a bit short of time, but please, now there is a room for at least a few questions from the participants. If something triggered further inquiries, or maybe some remarks or thoughts. So this is the moment for you to share. Ieva, if you can stop sharing the slides. If there are not questions yet, maybe one I can just pose on my own part. I was just thinking that maybe if people listening to the presentations might want to put a bit more meat on the bones, because now having been in the field work and now aggregating the results, that maybe we can come back and maybe each of you, Mikelis and Ieva and Albert, you can mention one example from the studied ones that maybe was the most interesting or most surprising for you that that you could sort of highlight, if I may. I don't know who goes first here.
Well, it's challenging, definitely. But there were a couple, and I think it might be more appropriate if those people who conducted these case studies would present these, because I was just reading the report. But I think grand people from Norway that use discarded vegetables to produce completely new products, or Fibonol that used wood residues to produce lignin. I'm sorry, my English sort of. Also, the both insect protein cases were very interesting in just because of the question of where do they find market, how do they supply the residues that they need, or food waste that they need to actually operate. I think all of them had something interesting, and so we would need to go into detail, but I don't want to steal all of those from Are, and I will leave at least some so that you can mention those.
Yeah, Albert, do you have a favorite of yours?
I think we are going to have a publication about our research results related to this of both insect protein production case studies. So I would mention them. I think, but yes, the most surprisingly thing was that at the there were cases that was very like wow at the beginning, and then you understand that this is just a business at the end. Yes, but it was a very interesting process from the beginning till the end. Yes.
Okay, thank you. And if there are still no questions from the audience, but please feel free to jump in. I was wondering if Mikelis already touched a bit upon this, the potential of upscaling this type of initiatives. Maybe you can add a comment on that. Do you see any prospects that these business models can be upscaled, and whether this comes with some trade-offs with the socioeconomic benefits and costs?
Most of cases can be, yes. Sorry, Mikelis. But there are some which are very related to concrete place or concrete resource or concrete something which is just in hands of that one company, and this can't be, yes, upscaled or duplicated.
Mikelis?
Yeah, I think that the challenge that we noticed when we are talking about upscaling is that at some point sort of you need really a lot of input materials to keep going and to sort of be really efficient in using all the technologies that you have. And in this point, you have sort of reached a switching point where you are not eliminating residues or waste, but you are sort of generating additional waste sort of to just keep the machinery going. And then there is this this interesting question that if this indeed is the case, then suddenly the technologies that actually can use the mobile can benefit from the broadest diversity of different residues becomes most appealing for entrepreneurs, which means that you are not anymore. So if the aim is to sort of use bioresource residues in the most efficient way, then suddenly this is not the solution. So there is well, all of these cases probably can be upscaled. There's certain limit when it doesn't make any sense anymore. And this just puts a pressure on how efficient these initiatives can be. And then sort of at the end, in my mind, it's a pose question, will they ever be cheaper and will they be able to compete with the conventional production methods? And if they won't, how can we protect them so that they will still be interesting to local producers to actually implement them?
Thank you, Mikelis. And if there are no still questions from the audience, maybe the last one that popped into my mind, and I think that we have been also thinking along the evolution of the project, was whether we can equate circularity with sustainability, because I think this was something that initially we presumed that it equates and then by nature sustainable. But do you have some insights from your analysis that along this line of reasoning?
I will give the floor to Ieva and Albert in a moment, but before that, sort of, I think we found a lot of unexpected answers. So tools that comes to my mind very quickly. So in general, we would expect that circular use of bioresources would equate also to sustainability. And if these practices are introduced responsibly, then they should. But then in the case of fipronil, and this is just a hunch and no serious calculations have been conducted, but there was a discussion sort of what amount of wood residues they would need to become efficient and profitable. And then if they would use all the wood residues in sort of the region, can we still talk about any type of sustainability? And that's one question. But then the next question is, sort of once you start to look under the wraps a little bit more carefully and trying to understand what's happening to different side processes taking place during this resource closure, you realize that quite often some ends remains uncovered or sort of not resolved. And then there is Albert could probably talk more about that, what's happening to excess heat. And sort of if you don't deal with that, then sort of you still, Albert, please come in to sort of correct me. But if I understand what you have been explaining, that if you don't deal with excess heat, then sort of how can you really talk about sustainability? It's just have to resolve that side as well. Albert, save me, please. No? Okay.
Okay, we cannot decide which will start, I or Ieva, but I will start about this circularity and sustainability. Yes, circularity necessarily do not mean sustainability. However, transition to circular economy is one of 6 environmental objectives stipulated by EU taxonomy and in general by EU green policies. However, there's quite significant condition when we speak about sustainability, at least in context of EU framework, that there's not only necessary to make significant contribution. For example, circular business models usually make significant contribution to transition to circular economy. But at the same time, the activity should do no significant harm to other 5 environmental objectives. So we should look at this context that circular business model not only should be circular and so make significant contribution, but it also should not make significant harm to other environmental objectives. For example, climate change mitigation, climate change adoption, restoration of biodiversity and ecosystems, and etc. So I will give the floor to Ieva if you would like.
Yeah. Everything is said. Brilliant.
Okay, Thanks a lot to all three of you, and thanks a lot for the quiet audience. But I hope that being quiet doesn't mean that you haven't taken any takeaway messages for you. So thank you again for attending. The recording will be made available, so in case you want to come back to it. And we're having our third and fourth webinars in the coming month. One organized by Lithuanian colleagues and the other by Norwegian colleagues. So keep posted and follow us on Twitter and websites, and hopefully we'll meet again. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.